And welcome back to the dojo. I'm joined today by my friend Dan Meylan. Welcome to the dojo.
Thank you very much. Glad to
Yeah.
be here.
We're here to talk about the state of self funding
Oh my gosh.
and the future of trusted advice.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people would argue Dan's the guy that talks about this all the time.
I talk about it all the time. Yeah, you're right.
So
Yep.
when I was putting this together, I thought there's nobody more perfect for this conversation. You don't know this, but I've been tutored by you for nearly a decade or more. Dan, it's no secret you've seen multiple cycles in this industry.
Sure.
What's the difference today versus what we saw in the cycles 5 years ago?
So there's a couple of things that are really prevalent. Right now there's more pain. There's because healthcare costs are out of control, people are confused, they don't know what's going on, and the element people are walking around a corner getting hit by a brick, literally, by this whole cost of increase, and they're so confused. We're starting to see the beginning of transparency, and obviously artificial intelligence is changing that. But it's just at its infancy. It's not yet mature in its solutions. And the thing that I'm seeing is that people are confused and angry and not sure why this happens because they haven't really taken the time to study it. I'm amazed by the number of fully insured contracts that I still see for large groups. I just got several of them that I'm working on right now. And I'm amazed that they haven't really woken up to the idea that, our cost of care, our cost of our premiums, the cost of all the things we're doing is driven by the cost of claims. They're looking at the broker and saying, how come you're charging me so much? Well, if the broker is having that conversation, then they miss the game. That's just not the game anymore. The game is the cost of claims. And having been in the risk finance space now for well over 5 decades, it's always been the cost of claims. That's nothing new. It's just people are finally waking up to the idea maybe the insurance companies haven't done the best job they should have done.
Yeah, I think, I had a segment here recently where we talked about PPO discounts and cost containment strategies, and all those things are great. I think they're important tools that some advisors, not all, but some advisors, some consultants, some brokers out there are using. What concerns you most, though, about where our industry is headed? We've had a long history of getting to this point.
Right.
What's the concern for you?
So my concern as I look forward into the next decade, first of all, I have 8 grandkids. And the reason I'm still engaged is because I see the legacy we're leaving for the next generation, and it's not good. And so my greatest concern is talent, okay? You're a really talented guy, Jason, and so are the people that work for you. The problem is there's a whole bunch of us that are my age that are going to they'll disappear. And a lot of talent, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience is going to leave the industry and leave a vacuum. And if that vacuum is not appropriately filled in, then the politicians are going to try to come up with a solution, which we know will never work. So my greatest concern is that this is a complex business, has lots of opportunities attached to it, but we're not really nurturing the next level of talent. Now, you and your organization have gone out and hired 2 young guys in the last 60 days. Kudos to you, okay? That's the beginning of the process. Problem is we need about 600 of those kids who all are committed to sticking with this game, which is not easy, but the rewards could be very compelling in terms of what they could achieve in the course of their lifetime and how they help go forward with this business. I see the existing brokerage environment disintegrating. I think the existing broker's a dinosaur. I think health insurance as a solution no longer is viable. It's got to be healthcare risk financing where people understand where the money is going and how it's being spent and start holding people accountable.
Yeah, anything in there give you any optimism?
Oh, I'm optimistic because there are movements. So we live in a world, there's 3 very distinct players, the disruptors, the doubters, and the protectors. Okay? We like to think of ourselves as disruptors because we're trying to move the needle by bringing solutions. There's a whole universe out there of doubters who look at it and go, I don't think this is going to work, and here's 15 reasons why. And then you have a universe of protectors, and those protectors are people who have a vested interest in not changing the system. Well, there's always a vested interest in not changing the system because they're making a lot of money at it. And there's money being made in the billions, not the millions, the billions of dollars that are at risk here. When you look at the healthcare consumption in America, it's 20% of GDP. 20 cents of every dollar in America gets spent on healthcare. And that is at least 60% higher than anywhere else in the world. So we have a problem. And the optimistic outlook is that there are solutions. The question is, are we willing to go through the endurance of the pain that's necessary to fix it?
And just a few short years ago, I think healthcare expenditures as a percentage of GDP was 16%.
Oh, it was less than that. If you go back to 2010 or before, it was 7 to 8% of GDP. And today it's almost 20%. And it's going to it really is on a trajectory to well exceed 20% of GDP. I think the Milliman came out with a study a couple of weeks ago where family health care in America is for a family of four is like $38,000 a year. And at the trajectory, if you look at it from 2010 to 2026, you would see that by the year 2030, it'll be well over $50,000.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's not sustainable.
It's I say it all the time. It feels like the family premiums anymore are outpacing a mortgage payment on a really, 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 really nice house.
It's an unfortunate reality, and I think that probably the most devastating thing is I have grandchildren. I sit down and talk to them, and they don't have a clue, but they're the ones who are going to pay the bill. Yeah. Literally, they will pay the bill. And my commitment is to try to fix that by working with people like you and young people who have what I call chronological capital, who are smart enough and intelligent enough and passionate enough to drive this process forward.
Well, and that I've got a background in self-funding, and I probably make a lot of enemies when I say self-funding isn't the answer, but it's not. It is not the answer. It is a tool that unlocks a lot of the answers, is kind of my argument. What do you see, in that self-funded space, what do you see the biggest misconception brokers have of stop loss and how it interacts in a self-funded plan?
Brokers who are outselling policies are selling a stop loss policy. They're not bringing a solution. Stop loss is a part of a solution. It's not the solution. That's probably the biggest issue. Stop loss in the right configuration with the right set of controls in it makes a lot of sense. But stop loss for the sake of stop loss doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, it's just, we have an entire universe in the broker community today that's about selling policies. They're selling a product. They're not solving a problem. And a stop loss policy as a policy is not a solution. What happens around the stop loss contract, the cost containments, the other things that happen to it, that's part of the solution. And when I talk about it, I talk about healthcare risk financing. Well, stop loss is part of that process. And if you're committed as an employer to embracing cost containment measures, your stop loss premium is going to go down. Okay? If you're not committed to controlling your cost of claims, your stop loss premium is going to go up. And it's a function of the marketplace. I just looked at a group recently that there are approximately a little over 900 people in it, and 20 people are spending 45% of the money, and those claims are all in excess of $500,000. That's where the money is. It's in the big claims. And so if you're, as an employer, not committed to doing the kind of cost containment you need to question those numbers, your stop loss premium is going to go up. That's just a given.
Yeah. I see people all the time, they're chasing bottom line rate on stop loss, they're chasing fixed cost, and that's not a bad situation to be in as a broker, as an advisor. You're doing price comparisons, you're trying to get the coverage at the lowest possible cost, but left unchecked, like you said, stop loss isn't the answer. It's not the solution. It's part of unlocking a lot of the answers that come, but you almost have to tend the stop loss policy just like you would. I think of it like tending my lawn, right? If I do nothing but mow every week, all I'm doing is taking care of the parts that you can see really well. But what happens when I'm not trimming and I'm not blowing the loose clippings off the driveway and the sidewalk, like that stuff piles up and it looks bad, right? Well, a stop loss policy left by itself, to me, without any attention to cost containment, is just
Well, not only
it's
that,
letting it rot.
stop loss contracts are legal contracts at the end of the day, and they have provisions and terms and conditions that everybody needs to be very well aware of. I just worked through a process with somebody that had a 12/18 contract, and guess what? Not all the claims were settled after the 18, so now they're writing checks where there's no stop loss, and the 18 months kind of expired, and they still got several million dollars worth of outstanding claims, and guess what? They're writing checks. They had no idea when they bought the policy, and the broker didn't tell them that they were buying a 12/18 contract. Oh, by the way, they left the self-funded world, went back to fully insured. Well, the broker who took them back to fully insured because they wanted a low price never even mentioned the fact that that 12/18 contract was going to stop paying claims. And so now not only are they paying a premium on the fully insured contract, but they're now also writing checks for claims that are still running out from the old plan.
Sure.
That's what you're talking about. That's why you
exactly
tend the lawn.
Tend the lawn. You got to pay attention to it. You have
Yes.
to, it's a lot more. There's a lot more to being in this space than selling rate, and I think that's the key that a lot of consultants, a lot of advisors, a lot of brokers out there have to understand.
Sure.
But most of them are just spreadsheeting and chasing.
That's all they know how to
chasing
do.
rate.
The problem with the broker is that the broker gets paid a commission based on a sale, and an advisor who's doing the job brings a value to the table that's not necessarily definable until you see the results at the end. And the employers have been tuned into the idea. Take a contractor, for example. He bids everything, so he bids his insurance. Well, if he's bidding for the services of an agent and he buys the lowest agent, he's going to get the lowest value. And as a result, he's going to pay the highest cost in the long term because of claims that exist. If you have an advisor that's doing their job and they're charging $40 PEPM, they say, why the heck are you charging $40? Because I'm going to hold your hand through the process, and that's what my time is worth. Then their competitor comes along and says, we'll do it for $25. Now the deal's gone, and it's based on price. It has nothing to do with value. And one of the challenges that I see is that the next generation of healthcare advisors has to be able to sell value, not price.
Yeah. You've been beating that drum for a long time, Dan. Our company name has brokers in it, and so I'm probably partial to hanging on to that term,
Sure.
but redefining it. I think for me, it's time we redefine what a broker really does, instead of for me again, instead of renaming them. I think there's a lot of really people with really good intentions that do want to do right by their client. They just don't know how. It's such a complicated world. When you get outside the comfort zone of a fully insured spread, where you're really just commoditizing the whole transaction, and you get into the complexities of self-funded, there's more than just looking at bottom line rate. What do you think? What do you think advisors, to use your lexicon, are missing when they're evaluating different stop loss carriers?
Stop loss contracts are complex documents. And recently we installed a stop loss contract that was actually through a captive where the employer, who happened to be an engineer, was very detail oriented. And we spent 5 hours literally taking that contract apart, one paragraph at a time. And he not only wanted to know what it said, he wanted to know what it meant. And when we got to the end of the conversation, his commentary was, now I get it. And I understand now what my exposures are and what we have done here. And now I understand why we need to control the value of our claims, because this ultimately is going to keep my costs down over a period of time. The stop loss contracts have razor blades in them. And that is, you can get cut really fast if you miss something. The other thing is the stop loss contract and the administrative services agreement from the TPA need to be harmonized. I learned that when I was at Payer Compass and we were doing reference-based pricing, because there was a very distinct process that you had to go through to make sure that there was harmonization between what the TPA was required to do and what the stop-loss contract said. And if you haven't done that, then you have left yourself open. The other part of the stop-loss contract is it reflects the fiduciary responsibilities of the employer to manage the assets of the fund, which not a lot of brokers or advisors are even putting their head around that yet. But the stop loss contract, for example, that runs out after 18 months and doesn't provide payment, has marginalized the fiduciary responsibility of the employer, and now they're on the hook for the money. But they have to account for that to their employees, because the employees have paid money into the plan. So technically, there's a problem there. There are many things inside of a stop-loss contract that they get you in trouble. And you need to read them carefully, understand what they say, and then understand how they're going to be executed. And then finally, the question is who stands behind them? Because there are interpretations that take place on insurance contracts that can be in favor of the employer or in favor of the carrier. Who is it that I'm dealing with, and what can I do to trust them? At the end of the day, this business is about who you trust. And there are just some stop-loss carriers out there that, and MGUs that have proven that they can't be trusted.
Yeah.
So ask the questions.
Yeah. What in that sense, have we as an industry become too dependent on stop loss being the solution versus just managing the underlying risk?
Stop loss is never the solution. Stop loss is a finance mechanism, pure and simple. It's about the dollars, okay? It is never going to be cost containment. Now, it can encourage cost containment by its structure, and it can be a vehicle to reflect successful cost containment. But ultimately, it's a finance mechanism. It's not a cost containment mechanism. At the end of the day, if you are in a stop-loss contract, you're going to pay the premium, and you're going to have a specific and aggregate attachment point that will be determined by very specific language and a very specific contract. Okay, not going to change. It's there. It's what it is. Where the differences are is how you execute the claims adjudication process and what you do to mitigate claims, what you do to control claims cost, and what you do to get the members engaged and the employer engaged in how they control the cost of their claims.
You know, I say this a lot. I've been doing this a long time, and I've
Sure.
kind of always been in the self-funded space. I dove into the industry in the deep end of the self-funded space. So for me, it's always been there, but I feel like more employers are self-funded today than ever before.
Sure.
I think that's probably a true statement. I don't have any data to back it up. I think more licensed insurance agents out there are selling self-funded policies, whether they know it or not.
Yes.
Is it too early to say that it's mainstream?
I don't know that it's too early to say that it's mainstream. Let's bifurcate the market for a minute. Let's talk about there's three very, very distinct marketplaces and market segments. The first market segment is the under 100 life group, okay? Say under 50 lives. In the 50 lives, it's a price conversation. It's a level funded contract if it's self-funded at all. And it's still predicated on whatever the claims look like in the medical conditions or the medical risk profile of that group. And ultimately, that small employer is in survival mode, which means they're looking for the lowest price, and they don't care how they get there. So that segment of the marketplace is strictly about price. The brokers are not that sophisticated. The employers are not that sophisticated. There's not a lot of room to discuss things. It's either an acceptable rate or it's not, and you go on from there. That's 96% of all the businesses in America. The second segment is the 50 to 500 or the 100 to 1,000 life. That's the mid-market, et cetera. That's where a lot of us play. And that is where you have an entrepreneur that's got some kind of an infrastructure in a business. And that's where relationships matter. That's where you have an advisor that can go in and make a meaningful difference. And they can be self-funded or level funded. But that segment of the marketplace, which is about 2.5% of the total businesses in America, are embracing self-funding. I mean, they are the ones that are really taking that hard, long look, and they're looking at it going, whoa, this is something we absolutely need to do. And then there's the over 1,000. Those people are all self-funded and have been for years. Okay, that's the institutional world, and that's a transaction that involves larger agencies with unbundled environments where they take apart every single piece of the healthcare space. They understand fiduciary liability. They have in-house counsel. They have HR departments. They have finance departments. You're literally dealing with a team of people, and the sales cycle for that contract is a 24-month. If you're going to go after one of those, you spend 24 months just trying to put it to bed. In the 10 to 100s, or the 100 to 1,000, the mid markets, it's a 12 to 18 to 24 month adventure to try to get one of those deals put together. But in the under 100 to under 50 life market, you're looking at 120 to 180 days max, and it's a price driven conversation. So the small group, which is 96%, is price driven. The second group, which is the 50 to 500, or the 100 to 1,000, is a relational market. That's where the relationships matter. When you get over 1,000, it's now an institutional conversation. If you can't bring in institutions, just stay home. Okay, it's not worth your time. And the problem in the institutional market is you can buy and sell, those companies get bought and sold every day. You can bust your tail going after an institutional group for 1,800 employees, and three days after you sell it, they get merged with somebody else and they just disappeared. It's 0.2% of all the employers, but it's 65% of all the employees in the private sector. So those are the three markets, and it's different for each one of them.
I know here at Legacy, we're seeing more focused energy from the employer side and the brokers that are working that in the 50 to 100 space around really making sure that the plans that they put together have transparency, that give the employer and the decision makers the tools that they need to make future decisions about their policy. It's not 100%. There's still a lot of price sensitivity there, but we're seeing more focused energy in that space than we have in recent years. What do you think, regardless of size, what do you think separates the self-funded groups that are performing well versus the ones that aren't?
It's really simple. It's leadership. It's leadership at the employer level. It's leadership at the advisor level. It's leadership at the vendor level. When you have a good collaborative group of people where they're all on board with the idea that, hey, we have a problem and we're going to be part of the solution, and they engage and they're committed to the disruption that's required to get them there, it works like a charm. And I have seen results that are extremely favorable over a prolonged period of time where they have performed very, very well, but it requires commitment. It requires leadership. Leadership means getting people to do things they don't want to do. Typically, why are we going to change our Blue Cross card? Well, because if you continue to do that, school districts look at a 70% rate increase. Can't sustain it. It's not sustainable. So what are the options? Well, the option is to go self-funded. But here are the things you have to do. Are you committed to doing that? And the answer is we have no choice. We have to do that. So leadership at the school district says, yes, we're in. Okay. Then we have an advisor that's in. And we have a TPA that's in. Okay. And we have direct primary care that's in. They're all part of a collaborative team. They're all in. And there's a collaboration of leadership that takes place at all levels in the process. Yeah. It's all about leadership.
It's like building a self-funded plan that has all of the components, except you're using a PBM that doesn't, that keeps rebates, doesn't provide any transparency.
So the thing that gets
wrecks the plan.
Well, the thing that gets in the way of that process is typically the broker, who thinks they have to be the leader, and they don't know how to be a quarterback of a team. They want to be the team, and they want to do all the things, and they don't want everybody to have a conversation without their presence, which is, people can have their own thoughts and ideas. You got to be adaptable, and part of leadership is understanding the bigger picture and driving to a solution where everybody wins and making sure you communicate that. That's not salesmanship. That's leadership. Salesmanship means closing the deal. Leadership means solving a problem. And that's the biggest problem in the brokerage community today. Everybody wants the sale, not the solution.
That leads us right into my next question, Dan, and that is, I mentioned I'd like to redefine broker.
Sure.
You've been beating the drum on trusted advisor for a long time, ever since the first time I think I ever met you. If I was on a mission to redefine broker, how do I define them as trusted advisors? What's the
So,
difference?
so the difference is that a broker sells a policy, but an advisor brings a solution. In other words, what's your value proposition? My value proposition 20 years ago was I'm going to bring you the best policy. That ain't going to work anymore. Okay. The value proposition today for a broker is actually someone who can identify the problem and bring a solution that brings value to the client. And it's not just a sale today, it's extended value over time where the value that you're getting paid as the advisor is reflective of the results that you create for that client. And in the process, when you take somebody out of a traditional insurance environment and pull them into a self-funded environment where they're now financing healthcare risk, you're having to teach them. You have to train them. It's now about education because 90% of what you're going to do is educate people. You're not going to sell them, you're going to educate them. So if you're going to redefine the word broker, broker now becomes an educator, not a salesman, okay? Because you have to bring people to new levels of knowledge, new levels of understanding, new levels of comprehension. And what's interesting, and you said something a minute ago that was kind of, and that is, the employers are becoming more engaged. Well, why? They want to know why. Good leadership in companies are asking, why is my premium just go up 300% or 100% or 90% or 60%, whatever that number is? Nothing else around me is going up that fast. Why is this happening? And if you're just a sales guy, say, well, I can get you a better policy. That's not the right answer. The right answer is, let me explain and let's get together and figure out how we can solve this together. What are you as the employer willing to do? I'm willing to do anything there's necessary. Okay.
I hear that all the time.
What do I have to do?
Yeah.
And I said, well, hire healthier people. And now that's not realistic.
Not realistic.
But at the same time, it's fundamental to the concept. And that is, we have to create healthier people. That's one of 12 things that are a problem. We have an unhealthy lifestyle, but that's, we don't want to get into that discussion. We could be here for 4 hours. So, yeah.
What do you think? What do you think a broker does to earn the status of trusted advisor?
Solve problems. I mean, this is a war zone. Think of it as a war zone, okay? And in a war zone, there's foxholes, and there's problems, and there's issues. Trusted advisors get in the foxhole with the employer and help them understand how to fight the battle, okay? If you're not willing to get in the foxhole with your employer and their staff, and basically run interference for them, there's a great movie out there called Hacksaw Ridge. And that guy,
Really?
that it's a phenomenal discussion about sacrifice and being willing to take risk, et cetera. That guy hauled 50 or 60 guys off the top of that hill. That's what this is about. You're out there becoming a trusted advisor. It got to the point where those guys wouldn't go to the top of the hill unless he went with them. They wouldn't fight the battle unless he went along. That's a trusted advisor. That's somebody, when they come to see you, they say, I know I can trust this person to do what I need them to do. That's hard. It takes a lot of work. It's not easy. And we are dealing with people's money and their health and their emotions. That's tough. People get wound up in a hurry about those three things.
Yeah. I try to remind people all the time, we're taking care of people.
That's what we're doing.
We're not just selling insurance.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And we've beat the drum here, that a trusted advisor is going to sit on the same side of the table as the employer, as the buyer. It's not passing the transaction over the table and asking them to sign. You're sitting on the same side of the table. You're seeing what they're seeing from their perspective. What do you think destroys trust?
Oh, failing to deliver as advertised, overpromising and underproducing, creating expectations that are unrealistic, and then not achieving the expectations. One of the challenges we have going into a competitive environment is I've got somebody sitting who's in the presentation or just finished a presentation that promised this guy the moon, and I'm going, I ain't promising you the moon because I know for sure that we're going to have a problem in this area, and all of a sudden you're out the door because you're being realistic, and then those guys that sat there and shot the moon at the client can't deliver at all, and now you get another phone call later on and said, hey, come on back, let's have another conversation. Well, a year has gone by, and now you got to start all over again from scratch. So people overpromise consistently, and if I looked at myself in the mirror 150 times, I kicked myself 16 ways from Sunday because I overpromised and underproduced, and I lost trust.
Yeah.
And I watch it happen all the time.
So what's a scenario? I mean, you've probably got plenty
Oh,
of scenarios. What's a scenario where you realized that the relationship was more important than the product?
well, I can go right back to my time in Allied National. We did really well with reference-based pricing. I mean, it was a killer for 5 or 6 years, and then the thing went to heck in a handbasket. And we had brokers that literally moved an entire block of business away because we couldn't get claims paid. Okay, and they were we were impairing their relationship with their clients. As a result, they were not going to do business with us. And so it had nothing to do with the money. It had everything to do with trust. And if you violate trust, you're going to lose business. It's just as simple as that. It's not any more complicated. How that happens, one of the challenges we have in the self-funded world and in the level-funded world that we're in is that we rely on outside vendors to do things, and we make promises as the intermediary to deliver certain things, and then the vendor doesn't do that, and it's us that takes the hit. Well, the broker basically is out there with a relationship with an employer, and he lives and dies and gets fed by that relationship. If you can't support his relationship with a level of trust, he's not going to do business with you. That's just, I mean, it's not that complicated, but it's the more insidious technology becomes, it's not about what you know, it's about who you trust. And there's 100 different ways to violate trust, and it takes infinite amount of patience, persistence to create and develop the trust so people will actually hang with you when things get messy. When I was at Allied, we had a tagline: "We do messy with a smile." So we tried to be positive, but it wasn't always possible, and the positivity wasn't always what sold the game.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean those scenarios, right? RBP, even PPO. I mean, I've got a situation today where most offices around the country are closed today, but we've got a situation that came up that could certainly wait till Monday. Without anybody really getting too upset, but someone's going to have to stew on that problem all weekend. And in this scenario, the broker's sitting on the right side of the table, seeing it from their perspective and saying, I know places are closed, but there's got to be a way. There's got to be somebody that can fix this today.
Yep. Well,
And those are the kind of things I think that people can do to not just earn the trust in the first place, but to really to maintain it. And it's something they got to continue to work on. You don't earn the trust and it's there forever. It's just like going through the renewal process. You've got to continue to work on the trust, building the confidence in your client, in your ability to maintain that trust level.
sure.
So
Trust is it's like a wall. You build it one brick at a time, and it takes one shot, and the whole wall goes down.
it really does. It really does.
It's one of those life lessons that the older I get, the more I understand the value of being trusted.
What's something you would tell a younger Dan?
Keep your mouth shut, your eyes open, and your ears open, and don't get too full of yourself. In other words, there's arrogance always magnifies ignorance, and there are lots of people that are very smart that they're just missing the reality that's in front of them sometimes. And I look at myself all the time, and I ask myself in the mirror, what am I missing today? If I haven't learned anything in 53 years of doing this business, there's stuff I don't know and I'm not going to know. I just finished a conversation about 45 minutes ago here in your office with a young man who I am going to retain to help me understand ChatGPT. Because you and I are linear thinkers. These young kids don't think linearly. They think in terms of, bucket loads of information that they can go and access and figure out what's going on. Problem is they don't have the maturity to get the relational side of this thing wired down. So they're relying on us for the relationship side, but they have access to data that we never dreamed of. And the correlation between those two things is where that's why I'm still here, and I want to try to be involved in it, is that trying to learn and understand how they see the world so that I can help them better prepare for the relationship side of this. I'm getting ready to write a book for my grandkids called Grandfather's Notes on Leadership to My Grandchildren. And there's 40 chapters that I've already kind of put together. But the idea is, who are the next leaders going to be? Are they going to be people that can manage data, or are they going to be people who can take care of people? And I think it's a people to people conversation, not a data to people conversation. So
Something I talk about here, why, our why here is meaningful impact. And I often say it's the old Boy Scout in me. I want to
Yeah.
I want to leave it better than I found it.
Sure.
I'm going to clean up camp better than it was when I got here. When you look back over your career, I mean, you just celebrated a milestone birthday. Thank
Sure.
you for the invitation. It was wonderful. When you look back over your career, you mentioned 53 years, what is it that what's the lasting impression you want out there for Dan Meylan?
And I'm sort of achieving it already, and that is, I want to work with young people who have the chronological capital. They can take what I know and impart my wisdom to them, and as a result, they would say that, hey, Dan helped me get to a level I wouldn't have got to otherwise. And I'm not going to do that with 7,000 people. I'm going to do it with 30 or 40 maybe, okay, which is fine. I mean, at the end of the day, and I have a number of clients, that I work with, including people that well, that I've invested 10, 12, 15 years in, and I'm still investing, and I'm watching them grow and mature and become more powerful and become more knowledgeable, and they're growing, and I'm a sounding board. I listen and I advise and I watch, and I look around what's going on around them, and I give them perspective that they wouldn't have otherwise. I give them wisdom that they have not yet achieved because they haven't fallen down on their nose and broken it 16 times like I have. Don't go there. Just keep your mouth closed and wait. People don't wait well these days, and sometimes waiting is a necessity. If you wait, the game will come to you.
Yeah.
There are times to strike and there's times to sit. And sitting is hard, but sometimes it's the wisest thing you can do, and people don't understand that. I have a situation, we looked at a transaction for an agency, and after all the smoke cleared, we had a great conversation with the prospect, and we decided, you know what, this just is not a fit. Well, as it turned out, had they done that transaction, they would have missed two more that came right behind it, but there were way better, way better deals. And so sitting on your hands sometimes is not the wrong thing to do. And when you're a sales guy, you're so driven to go do a sale that you're not ready to make it happen.
It's like exactly what I'm going through today, and you have no clue, Dan, no clue. But what you said resonated with me on a different level, because I'm working on a deal that is arguably the largest deal I've ever had the opportunity to touch in my career, working alongside a series of different levels of brokers and advisors and administrators and partners, and there's a lot of people involved in this deal.
Sure.
You mentioned when it gets over 1,000 lives, it's a different game.
It's a way different game.
And it's a different game. And I am I'm in a spot the last 3-4 days where the answer is we wait, and we let what we delivered marinate and let them stew on it, even though for the last 3-4 days all we've got back is negative feedback. Nope, we're not going to go that route. Nope, we want to do this. Nope, we want to go, you don't have this, you don't have that. And before you walked in here today, I got a call that said they want to talk, which is unexpected.
Let's break this down to the most simple form I can give it to you. Sales is a three-legged stool. It's the product, the process, and the politics. Okay, product and process is easy. Okay, politics are always the most complicated thing to navigate. And what we don't do is we don't step back and say, who are the players? How do they think? How do they behave? What is their interest in this project? And how do they perceive the problem in front of us? And are they team players? I mean, are we going to all be a collaborative team? And part of the challenge is you can have 7 or 8 people on that team. You got one that's a sour apple, you got a problem. And you got to deal with that problem. If you don't deal with that problem, you haven't solved the problem. because you can bring the wrong player to the table. And when we start talking about self-funded plans, we talk about the stack. Okay, the stack is all the various different vendors. You get one vendor that gets out of line and starts doing things their own way and doesn't want to collaborate with everybody else. All of a sudden, you get a mess. And who suffers from the mess? Well, the member suffers from the mess because they're confused. They don't know what to do, and and the employer gets mad at you, the advisor that's responsible, because you didn't control the process, and now you got another mess. And so organizing and keeping the stack and the team players in line is a leadership problem. It's not a salesmanship problem. And there are times when you as a leader have to draw a line in the sand. And one of the chapters in my book is called The Ruthless Leader. Okay, you have to be ruthless in certain instances. I had this conversation with my son earlier today, because there's a conversation taking place where he has to make a difficult decision. And he's come to me a couple times with it. And I said, well, you just have to sort your way through that, because I can't really tell you, but you've got a hard decision to make. What are you going to do? He said, I don't know. I don't like to be in this position. None of us like to be ruthless. Some of us thrive on it, but most of us don't. But there are times when ruthlessness is required. And you still make your own decisions. You have a lot. When you're in leadership, there's a ripple effect to everything that you do to a lot of people in a lot of different directions. And sometimes not making a decision is the best idea.
True. It's so true.
You know?
It's so true.
And if I look back at my career, I will tell you there are times when I had extremely disappointing circumstances. I tried to buy an agency that I had built, and I wasn't the low bidder, and it killed me, because I had built this thing from scratch, and it was making money, lots of money. And they finally went a different direction in selling it, and I was like, dang, I was devastated. But 2 years later, looking back on it, it's a good thing that I didn't buy it, because at the price I would have paid for it, I'd been bankrupt. Because the bottom fell out of the housing market in Colorado, and I would have had to lay off people. I would have had to take no salary. That's what the guys who bought it ended up doing. They survived and they thrived after about 2012 and 13. But there was 4 years where they just absolutely struggled to keep the thing afloat, and I would have gone down like a ship in the sea and been, it's one of those things you look back on decisions that you've made and say, what did I learn? What could I have done differently? Why am I here now? And what is it that's similar today than what I just went through? What we have as people that have been around for 50 years is we've made enough mistakes and seen enough things involving people. You start to see a pattern. You start to understand. This doesn't feel right. What's wrong here? Let's sit and wait and see what happens. Anyway.
Wise leader that I have a tremendous amount of respect for once told me, in a difficult decision, in a difficult delivering a difficult piece of news, sometimes you just have to shut the lights off to all the emotion that goes with it, all that panic and anxiety and what have you, and you just got to tell them the truth.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, when you turn those lights back on, that gut, but the butterflies in your stomach, the gut reaction of anxiety and panic of delivering the bad news, it was all done with the lights off. So when you turn that light back on, now you can be emotional. Now you can be compassionate about what their reaction might be to that news. And I think about it in a lot of aspects of life, and it applies here. It applies. It's really difficult to walk into a client's office and tell them they have a 60% increase from a BUCA level carrier who you would never imagine would drop an increase like that, but they do. And it's because this is what's going on within your group. These are the challenges we face, and we'll face them together.
Well, the good news along those lines is now, with the advent of AI and some of the tools that we have at our disposal, we can actually start profiling groups based on the census. And there's some new tools, and I'm really excited about what that looks like. I'm looking at a group right now that's a little over 900 lives, and I just did an analysis. They're spending almost $900,000 a month on claims, and they're on a fully insured Blue Cross plan. And they're exceeding their current premium by 2.8, $2.9 million. So you know they're, if on a fully insured basis, they're going to get a 35% rate increase. And it makes sense that that's what would happen. And there's no way around it. They should be self-funded, and there's all kinds of things that we could do. It's a great opportunity. The question is, where's the leader, the head of the leadership, and the people are going to make the decision about whether or not they're going to. Because these people are price shoppers. That's what they want to look at. They want to know what the price is. And I'm going to say, I can't tell you. You're going to decide how much this is going to cost you. I can't decide. I will help you create the tools and have the opportunity to reduce that cost. But you have to engage, you have to be committed, and you have to recognize that there's going to require some work on everybody's part to get this done. Otherwise, plan on a 30% rate increase and write the check to Blue Cross and be happy about it.
If you want cruise control, you get what cruise control brings you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Dan, we could talk for days.
Sure.
I have a feeling that this will not be your only appearance here in the dojo.
Sure. Cool.
I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
For all the viewers out there, do me a favor: keep learning, keep sharpening your craft. Remember that the mastery isn't the destination; it's a practice. And until next time, we'll see you right back here in the dojo.
Thank you very much.